A girl named Yumi, out of vanity, lies to her parents about getting into a prestigious university. She uses the living expenses they give her to secretly enroll in a cram school. To avoid raising suspicion, she studies high school courses through the night. After failing her exams again, she wanders around campus, pretending to be a freshman when questioned. She befriends a senior who invites her to dinner. To satisfy her vanity, she claims to be an international student from the US, with parents running a family business abroad. Her lie earns her admiration, boosting her pride. Her relationship with the senior grows stronger, and she gets invited to club events. With her looks and rich persona, she gains attention and even the affection of a senior guy. Shortly after they start dating, he reveals plans to study in the US and suggests they go together, with a promise of marriage after graduation. Eager to marry into wealth, she agrees and returns home, asking her father for money under false pretenses. Despite the family's financial struggles, her father sells everything to fulfill her wish. However, lies are bound to be uncovered. As they prepare to board the plane, her boyfriend receives a call from his mother, leaving her frozen in shock. Unaware, she waves goodbye to her boyfriend as the plane takes off, but she is left alone at the airport. The boyfriend's mother had exposed her lies, shattering her dreams of a wealthy life. Before she can recover, she receives news of her father's death, learning that he had been suffering from cancer for a long time. Because her father didn't want to interfere with her studies, he never spent money on his cancer treatment. The harsh reality finally hit her, and she regretted her vanity. After her father's death, she was left with a mountain of debt and had no choice but to work various labor-intensive jobs. For 5 years, she worked tirelessly, enduring back pain and exhaustion. One day, she saw an ad for a maid position and soon started working for a wealthy woman named Ann-Man. She thought her life would change for the better, but she was still given menial tasks. Even though she felt unworthy to complain, she worked hard for 3 years. One day, Ann-Man asked her to exchange some expired documents and gave her an expensive watch, making her grateful and hopeful that her employer might care for her. However, the next day, Ann-Man ridiculed her over her passport, even throwing it on the ground. This incident made her realize that rich people never truly see the poor as equals. Determined not to be looked down on anymore, she made a bold decision. That night, she stole Ann-Man's cash, passport, and documents and fled. She changed her appearance and replaced Ann-Man's photo with her own on the documents, aiming to enter high society. Later, she tried to sell the expensive watch Ann-Man had given her, only to discover it was a fake. The girl, while pretending to be a job seeker and attending various interviews, shares academic knowledge with students. She uses the identity of the wealthy heiress, Anna, living the life she always dreamed of. One day, she almost gets caught by a senior from the same school, but luckily, no one has ever seen Anna in person. This experience makes her realize that if she reaches the top of high society, no one will dare challenge her position. So, she goes to the wholesale market and buys all kinds of counterfeit luxury goods. Meanwhile, a student calls her with the good news that they were accepted into a foreign university. The girl forces a smile to congratulate them, but inside, she feels conflicted. She had tried twice with all her might and failed, yet wealthy kids succeed effortlessly. This deepens her obsession with power and money. The girl begins to craft an image for herself, raising her social value. She rents a high-end office in the CBD and, through her senior's connections, meets many influential people. She quickly thrives in this circle, rising from a senior lecturer to the youngest professor. Soon, she is noticed by a company president, who, to show his status, has a shipment of expensive items flown in from abroad. During a party, the girl casually asks why everything is so artistic except for the fake sofa. The president awkwardly smiles, unaware that the girl once worked as a maid in the wealthy district and can tell the difference between real and fake. The president proposed to her, but the girl declines his marriage proposal. But the president insists on meeting her 3 more times, promising to respect her choice afterward. She agrees and immediately tells her senior about him. The senior reveals that the president is a self-made entrepreneur with strong leadership skills. Hearing this, the girl smiles, and soon she starts dating him. They enjoy skiing and laughing together, and their relationship quickly progresses to marriage. To avoid exposing her true identity, the girl hires 2 actors to play her parents. They soon step into the wedding chapel, and for the girl, this moment is not just about getting married. More importantly, she achieved her wild dream of transforming from rags to riches, living the life she always longed for. Not only did she drive a brand new luxury car, but she also entered the influential circles thanks to her husband's reputation, thriving even more in the education field. However, her husband wasn't content and spent his days doing charity, aiming to run for mayor. At a charity event, due to a scheduling mistake, a child couldn't give a speech. Seeing this, the girl volunteered to be the child's temporary translator. With her encouragement, the child bravely took the stage, and they gave an inspiring speech together. Afterward, the girl excitedly hugged her, and the heartfelt moment brought applause from the audience, boosting her and her husband's popularity. From then on, her husband took her to various high-end events, where they mingled with prominent figures in politics and business. Just when she was deeply enjoying her wealthy life, someone appeared who shattered it all. Her former employer, the real Anna. Nervous, she dared not speak, but her shoes caught Anna's attention. Glancing at her retreating figure, Anna innocently said goodbye, leaving her trembling at the staircase, breathing heavily. From that day, Anna seemed to shadow her like a ghost, mocking her, asking if she had forgotten how to dance. Her mental state crumbled, and she began hiding in her office, too scared to go home. Late at night, she told her husband they should leave their luxurious apartment since he was running for office, and shouldn't display too much wealth. Her husband smiled, but his laughter felt unsettling. Quickly changing the subject, she asked him to help a senior find a job, but he gave her a meaningful look, as if hiding a secret. The next day, she was terrified when she saw someone familiar in the elevator. It was her former employer. She tried to stay calm and not let her husband or the employer see through her facade. But when the employer passed by, her heart nearly jumped out of her chest. Her husband's driver rushed over, panicked, and apologized for arriving late due to traffic, missing the pickup by just 1 minute. The wealthy man, impatient, walked up to the driver and immediately began to insult him. The driver tried to explain, but was silenced. Then, the rich man flew into a rage, furiously kicking and hitting the driver. It was the first time Yumi had seen her husband lose his temper, and she quickly tried to intervene, only for the wealthy man to turn on her with a beast-like expression, ordering her not to interfere. Helpless, she could only stand by and watch as the driver was beaten. After venting his anger, the wealthy man extended a hand of friendship, and the driver quickly got up, bowed, and apologized, promising never to make the same mistake again. However, the rich man immediately took the driver's seat and sped off, leaving the driver realizing he had just been fired. That evening, Yumi hesitated at the elevator. After a mental struggle, she decided to take the stairs in her 8-centimeter high heels. From the poised walk in high heels to the desperate barefoot struggle, she endured it all to avoid meeting Anna. She had managed to avoid her for 3 years, but this time, as she opened the stairwell door, she came face to face with Anna. Anna glanced at Yumi with disdain, then presented an elegant invitation card, questioning what was going on. Yumi, avoiding eye contact, was utterly panicked, knowing that her secret could no longer be kept. Anna threw the email at Yumi's feet, and though she found the situation somewhat laughable at first, her expression quickly turned to fury. Anna stepped closer and asked coldly, "If you are Anna, then who am I?" Yumi trembled and fell to her knees, pleading for time. But Anna, full of hatred, replied, "You stole my life, and now you must pay the price." She then demanded $3 billion as compensation. Yumi was in disbelief, but Anna coldly explained, "That's the value of my identity." Desperate, Yumi begged for mercy, but instead of showing forgiveness, Anna threatened to expose her to her wealthy husband unless the money was paid into a specified account within a month. Yumi was left in complete despair. Just as she was worrying about her identity being exposed, she noticed her husband celebrating with another woman in the passenger seat. Calmly, she shut the car door and turned around to report her husband's reckless driving. The next day, Yumi casually asked why the police had shown up. Her husband brushed it off with an excuse and quickly changed the topic, mentioning he had met with an influential foundation and wanted Yumi to run for city mayor. But Yumi, afraid her identity would be exposed, refused to participate. Her husband then introduced her to the new secretary, who was named is also Yumi, causing Yumi to freeze. It was as if she was looking at her former self. The immense pressure left Yumi feeling suffocated. Around this time, the housekeeper approached her, asking for 2 days off to care for her child, who was having surgery. However, this coincided with Yumi's growing frustration, and she took it all out on the housekeeper with harsh words. Afterward, she realized she had turned into the very person she once despised. Although it wasn't intentional, the recent events had left her deeply worried. On one side was her husband, eager to become mayor, and on the other was Anna, extorting her for $3 billion. They were like ticking time bombs, threatening to blow up everything she had. Nearly on the brink of collapse, Yumi went to the parking lot. When she saw Anna walking by, a dark idea crossed her mind. In that critical moment, Yumi's reason prevailed, though Anna, who had barely survived the encounter, showed no fear. Instead, she taunted Yumi, her words completely breaking Yumi's spirit. She realized that, in the eyes of the rich, she was nothing but a clown. Helpless, she had no choice but to continue finding ways to gather the $3 billion. To achieve this, Yumi had to accept the position of chairperson of the foundation, which led to many wealthy patrons exploiting her. These people pretended to support her, but only saw Yumi as a tool. Letting out a bitter sigh, Yumi glanced at the expensive gifts sent by these patrons. But all she cared about was the money inside. She then went to the parking lot to confront Anna, handing her the $1 billion she had just acquired, explaining that this was her limit. Anna threw the box to the ground and, in frustration, rubbed her forehead. There is nothing in this world that money can't solve. If there is, it's simply because there isn't enough money. In her words, Yumi was always just an ugly duckling. Anna hadn't walked far before she turned back and called out to Yumi, smiling as she warned her never to appear in her sight again and to keep taking the stairs. Yumi's heart was filled with despair and helplessness, but she obediently complied. Compared to the face that haunted her nightmares, she preferred to climb the stairs like a dog. Despite all of this, Yumi still clung to her fake identity. She tirelessly gathered information on the wives of influential men, then called to arrange meetings with them. These women, well versed in the political scene, had already instructed their assistants to place gifts in her car. Yumi looked at the gift in the passenger seat with a calm expression. She was becoming more adept at handling such matters. Soon, the important moment of her husband's election campaign arrived. Wearing glasses, she appeared gentle and refined, warmly greeting the senior officials. In the end, her husband defeated a 4-time incumbent, winning the sole mayoral election by a landslide. Yumi's status was elevated to a new level. She had become the highly regarded mayor's wife. From that moment on, her schemes became easier to execute. Every influential woman wanted to connect with her, and the most effective way was through gifts. What she doesn't know is that her ex-boyfriend has already revealed her false identity to the journalist. Initially, the journalist didn't believe it, but after a thorough investigation, more and more suspicious points were discovered. Just at that moment, Yumi's husband suddenly asked to meet her. It turned out he wanted to use the senior's identity as a journalist to create public opinion against Yumi. The senior refused outright, but he pointed at her and said, "You've got a rebellious spirit." To his surprise, journalist replied, "Thanks for the compliment." He laughed, but the louder he laughed, the more irritated he became inside. He immediately warned the journalist to learn how to seize opportunities, just like our Anna. What opportunity did Anna get? She married me. At this point, Yumi returned home, exhausted, and lay on the cold floor. All she knew was that she was walking further down a path of no return. It turned out that Anna was a divorced woman, and the only thing she truly cherished in the world was her beloved daughter. But tonight, she drank wine alone, as if something significant was about to happen. Later that evening, Yumi went to the pharmacy to buy sleeping pills and overheard a news report about a woman's suicide. The location mentioned was Anna's art gallery. This news left her in disbelief, so she decided to drive by Anna's gallery just to be sure. Outside, she saw it surrounded by police. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions. Why would the once arrogant and powerful Anna choose to end her life? Yumi suspected that her husband was behind it all, but before she could confront him, he found her first. In a commanding tone, he told her to resign from her teaching job and focus solely on accompanying him to events. His words made Yumi feel like she was just a pawn in his political career, so she refused without hesitation. The next day, when she arrived at school, she received a letter of termination from the administration. She knew this was her husband's doing, but she had no choice but to sign the resignation. From then on, she became fully entangled in his life, attending charity events and pretending to be the perfect wife during interviews. As her husband's influence and popularity grew, Yumi's anxiety only deepened. She knew that once he reached the peak of his success, she would be discarded without a second thought. Determined to secure a way out, she plotted to bring him down. She approached the secretary her husband had planted to spy on her, offering her a house in exchange for secret information. The secretary soon returned with her husband's tax records, containing evidence of all his corruption and bribery. To make matters worse, the investigation revealed that her husband had been married before and had a son with autism. However, the truly terrifying part was that shortly after their son was born, the boy's mother mysteriously disappeared. Yumi wasted no time spreading the news, catching her husband off guard. He demanded his subordinates kneel before him and demanded to know who leaked the information. But just then, another bombshell hit the news. Yumi's husband's academic fraud scandal had gone viral, and the couple's carefully fake public image crumbled. Seeing this, Yumi felt a moment of happiness, believing she had finally stopped her husband's ascent to power. But she underestimated the reach of his wealth and influence. When they met again, her husband calmly told her that everything had been handled. But the most chilling revelation came next. He admitted that he had known about her impersonation all along and even confessed to killing Anna. Yumi froze in shock. Though Anna had constantly taunted and threatened her, Yumi never intended to kill her, especially not after seeing Anna's young daughter. The guilt weighed heavily on her, but now her only option was to bring her husband to justice. The next day, she went to her journalist friend at the TV station and confessed her entire story, handing over a USB containing all of her husband's criminal evidence. At this point, Yumi had fully come to terms with her mistakes. Her father had died disappointed in her, and Anna had been murdered because of her deceit. It was a painful, sharp truth that pierced her heart. After parting with the journalist, Yumi went to visit her mother in the nursing home. However, her mother, now suffering from dementia, no longer recognized her, mistaking her for the daughter still living in America. This heartbreaking moment made Yumi realize that, in her pursuit of success, she had failed the people who mattered most, her parents. Meanwhile, her husband, sensing Yumi's growing defiance, contacted a foreign institution, planning to have her locked away for life. The next day, as the election proceeded smoothly and her husband was finally elected mayor, Yumi received news that her mother was critically ill. She returned home, begging her husband for permission to see her mother one last time, but he mocked her request. Coldly, he called his men to deal with her mother's funeral, seeing Yumi as a growing threat who knew too much. The following day, under the guise of a vacation, her husband forced Yumi onto a plane, preparing to execute his plan. Yumi, knowing her husband's true nature, understood what was coming next. As soon as they landed, her husband took her passport under the pretense of renting a car. Once they entered a remote area, he no longer hid his intentions. He claimed he had found a beautiful place for her, where, as long as she behaved, she could still live a comfortable life for the rest of her days. Furious, Yumi looked at her husband and realized he hadn't fastened his seatbelt. In an instant, a terrifying plan formed in her mind. Just as they approached a bridge, a deer suddenly ran out onto the road. Her husband swerved to avoid it, and in that critical moment, Yumi seized the opportunity to pull the handbrake. The vehicle lost control and crashed into the roadside. Injured, Yumi managed to get out of the car. As her husband was dazed, she retrieved her passport from him and began searching for a phone signal. Just then, she received a message from her journalist friend. The psychiatric institution had refused to accept her report. This news filled Yumi with despair. Even with evidence against her husband, he remained untouchable, protected by his power. Feeling powerless, Yumi tore off her seatbelt along with her handbag and set it ablaze. Without hesitation, she tossed it into the car, turning her back and leaving while her husband screamed in horror inside. Soon after, news of his death reached the country, but no one attended his funeral. The only one present was his autistic son, whom he had once abandoned. In the end, Yumi started a new life abroad. Although her circumstances were modest, she finally understood what true living meant. Thanks for watching. See you next time.